Leonis is an unlucky demon who was defeated by the heroes, so he reincarnates in the future to seek revenge. However, instead of getting revenge, all he found were bandits to face. It all began 1 year ago, when Leonis and his fellow heroes, Arquel, the Great Sage, and Saint Tiras, went on a mission to defeat monsters in a city. Arquel had a bold plan to defeat the monsters using a high-level spell that would affect not only the monsters, but also the people. However, this was not a problem, because Tiras had the power to restore lives, and he instructed her to do exactly that once all the monsters were eliminated. When he began to cast his spell, both the monsters and the people started to melt. But Leonis couldn't bear to watch this inhumane act and cut Arquel's spell in half. He then acted like a true hero and faced the monsters, making the people cheer for him as he did so. While the bitter duo was displeased, and the Dumbledore imitator said it was only a matter of time until Leonis's power helped him dig his own grave. 4 years later, Leonis visited a village under the crown's orders to help the people kill a monster that was troubling them. However, after arriving at the supposed monster's location, he was attacked by mages who used their magic to prevent him from moving. Some soldiers then came out of hiding and bound him with chains, pulling them to suspend him in the air. As Leonis struggled to break free, a group of soldiers grabbed spears and stabbed him with them. They only brought him down when they were certain he was dead, and as they walked away, they said he wouldn't have met such a fate if he hadn't gone against their master. They left his body there, and when it began to rain, the goddess Rosalia approached him. She said it was cruel what had happened to him, and asked if he wasn't angry for being betrayed by the people he trusted most, to which Leonis replied that he wasn't. Then she asked if he truly believed the world was just, and he said it made no difference, as humans did what they did to survive. Rosalia expected his righteous answers, and then asked if he was willing to join her and rebel against the world. Sometime later, Leonis, now a demon lord, returned to his castle after a battle to see Rosalia and inform her that they had defeated their enemy. After presenting her with the loot he collected from the battlefield, he told her about blacks and how they became friends. Rosalia congratulated him on the victory and the new friendship, and said she would reward him. That reward turned out to be the holy sword he wielded when he was still a hero, but Rosalia modified it. She said a holy sword no longer suited him, and what she would give him was a demonic sword. Well, before his eyes, she transformed the sword into a demonic sword, but before handing it to him, she said he would have to fulfill a condition if he wanted to wield it. That condition, as she explained, required the sword to question his truth, and unless he proved himself, he would never wield it. Some years later, the 6 remaining heroes declared war on Leonis, now known as the King of the Undead. While his skeletal army did its best to hold back the humans and the heroes, Leonis was informed by Sherry, his female Alfred Pennyworth, and his wolf friend Blax, that the fortresses of the other 7 demon lords had fallen, and theirs was the last one standing. From his magic orb, Leonis saw that the attack was being led by 3 heroes, Arquel, Centaurus, and the Lord of Serpents, Gizark, and he became enraged. However, when he summoned his staff to go out and face them, Blax advised him not to. He reminded him that he was the last remaining demon lord, and said that the goddess Rosalia wouldn't want him to perish there. Seeing the wisdom behind Black's words, Leonis decided the best course of action would be to seal himself until he could be reincarnated and fulfill the mission the goddess had given him. 1,000 years later, Ricia and her loyal aide Regina visited the underground ruins of Leonis's castle to investigate the void nests there. As they ventured deeper into the ruins, they found a sealed door with ancient markings. So, Ricia decided to search the online archives to decipher the message. Regina wasn't as interested in the sealed door, so she went to explore another part of the ruins. As soon as she left, Ricia touched the markings, and to her greatest surprise, the door opened as if kicking off a horror movie. Inside the room, torches lit up, and as she cautiously entered to check the place, her mana counter overloaded and stopped working. Ricia wondered why this happened when there were no voids nearby. However, she became more intrigued by the giant crystal when she realized there was someone inside it. At the same time, Cter Brow was dreaming of the goddess Rosalia. It was more a memory than a dream. And in it, Rosalia told him he would be reborn 1 year from that day in the form of a human child. Leonis's duty was to find her when that happened, and she urged him not to forget. The next moment, he opened his eyes and found Ricia trying to open his crystal chamber. Mistaking her for a grave robber, he decided to teach her a lesson for disturbing his sleep and shattered the crystal. The spell sent Racia flying and knocked her unconscious. Then, as Leon approached her, he was struck by her beauty and wondered why the animators spent the entire budget on her face. While staring at her like a creep, she regained consciousness and asked what a child was doing in such a place, making him wonder if she had hit her head too hard. However, he turned to look at his reflection, and that's when he realized his reincarnation had failed, as he had been reincarnated back into his human form. Please, no! He was still having a small crisis about his appearance when Racia began worrying over him like a mother hen and tried to check if there were any injuries on his body. When she found none, she hugged him against her chest and promised to take care of him like an older sister. Leonis thought her actions were disrespectful toward an undead king like him. However, he couldn't help but enjoy the feeling of her breasts against his face. A few moments later, he fainted, and when he woke up again, Racia gave him some of her food rations, as it was hunger that made his new fragile body shut down earlier. While he ate, Racia introduced herself to him and said she was a swordswoman in training and a member of the 18th Platoon at the 7th Excalibur Assault Gardens Academy. Of course, everything she said, besides her name, sounded like a young woman explaining her life goals to a one-night stand. But he listened and only gave his name. Racia was intrigued to know how he ended up in that place, and asked if he had been dragged there by a void. Confused, Leonis asked what a void was. So she explained that they were humanity's enemies that suddenly appeared 64 years ago. She added that she had come to the ruins to investigate, as void outbreaks were common in such places. While Leonis listened to her, they heard an explosion, and Regina contacted Racia to inform her that she had encountered a colossal void. The next moment, the room began to shake. Then, without hesitation, Racia knocked Leonis to the ground, acting as a disposable meat shield. Just as she assured him she would protect him, a void broke through the wall, and Racia identified it as an ogre-class void, which surprised Leonis, as he knew Shrek was obviously more charming than that. Racia told him to stay behind her and began shooting at the creature, but its body was tougher than when you're inside your favorite sock, so the bullets didn't penetrate. Leonis tried to intervene, as he didn't like the poorly built ape profaning the place where his comrades were, but his feet got caught in his cloak, and he fell. While cursing himself for having short legs, Regina appeared and blew off the void's arm. She fired a few more times before joining them and asking Racia where she had found one of Peter Pan's lost boys. Racia promised to explain everything once the void was dealt with. Then Regina asked Racia to take Leonis and run, assuring them she could handle the void alone. Believing in her friend's capabilities, Racia took Leonis and fled the room, which he didn't like, as he wasn't a spineless coward. However, he acknowledged he was out of his depth, and until he could learn more about the New World Order, he had to pass as a pitiful weakling. Just before they reached the exit, a wyvern-class void appeared and blocked their path. Racia asked Leonis to run, as she intended to fight the void, but he refused and decided to help her. Unfortunately, before he could complete his spell, Racia pushed him out of the way to save him from the void's attack, getting hit in the process. As she lay dying in a pool of her own blood, 2 more voids appeared. Then she weakly begged Leonis to leave her and flee. Leonis ignored her words while trying to understand why she had foolishly risked her life to save him. Seeing her that way reminded him of the day he died and was brought back by the goddess Roselia. The voids tried to attack him, but thanks to his boundless ability, he was using aura even more than Goku. However, he was enraged that they had taken Racia's life before he could learn more about her world, so he decided to teach them a lesson. Using his magic staff, he cast a gravity and fire spell to defeat the voids. Then he turned his attention to Racia's lifeless body and used his magic to revive her, as he felt grateful that she had willingly died for him. When her body returned to normal, a mark appeared on her thigh, making him wonder if she would forgive him for what he had done. At that moment, he heard Regina's voice coming from Racia's earrings, and was curious to know how the foolish humans had created such a device. At that moment, Racia woke up, and the first thing she did was hug Leonis, saying how happy she was that he was unharmed. Eventually, she realized she was healed, and Leonis explained that he had healed her with his magic. Racia wasn't familiar with magic and assumed he meant he had used his holy sword, which had healing powers. Deciding to play along, Leonis asked what a holy sword was, and she explained that it was a type of power that developed in humans when the voids began to appear. She said these powers took the form of weapons, so people started calling them holy swords. She told him she hadn't yet manifested her holy sword, but Regina had one, and it was the same one he saw her use against the void earlier. As soon as she finished her explanations, Regina found them, and after observing the surroundings, asked if they had encountered another void. It was then that Racia realized she didn't know what had happened to the void that attacked them. So she asked Leonis about it. He told her he was too scared to do anything, but when he looked up, the void had disappeared. Surprisingly, the girls believed his lie, as it was common for voids to act strangely. After leaving the ruins, Regina asked about Leonis again, and Racia told her he had been kidnapped by voids and taken there. She said he couldn't remember anything other than his name, so she would be his guardian for now. They then got on the bike, and while Racia pedaled toward the city, Regina introduced herself to Leonis as Racia's maid. As they approached the city, Racia explained to the astonished Leonis that it was called the Seventh Assault Garden and was humanity's last stronghold, built to resist the voids. When they arrived, Leonis looked around in awe and said he never thought empty-headed humans could build islands. Regina then explained that the Assault Garden wasn't an island but a mega-floater that traveled the sea to seek and destroy void colonies. While Leonis tried to process this information, Racia called someone and informed them she had sent the investigation data to them. She also told them about Leonis and said she would take him back to the dormitories because he had a holy sword. Regina was impressed that a short guy like him already had a holy sword. Then Racia boasted about how he used it to heal her wounds. She then told a confused Leonis not to worry about anything, as he would live with them in the dormitory for the students of the Excalibur Academy, explaining that the academy was an educational institute where people who would use holy swords trained to become holy knights. She assured him she would take care of all the enrollment paperwork and asked him to trust her, so he thanked her for helping him. As soon as Regina left them, Racia instructed Leonis to go through a specific door so he could be examined, as it was protocol for everyone entering the shop for the first time. She promised she would wait for him on the other side and then rode off on her bike. As soon as she was out of sight, Leonis sneaked in and summoned Sherry and Blax from his shadow. The two greeted him back and asked why he was in the body of a human child. "Well?" Blax asked, while Sherry seemed to love his new look and admitted he was cuter than when all he had were his long bones. Leonis warned them not to be swayed by his appearance, because although he looked all cute and cuddly, he was still a ruthless son of a gun. He then told them he needed them to explore the city while he stayed discreet and gathered information at the academy. He also warned them not to use their powers, as magic was now obsolete since humans had developed American breathing. After they parted ways, he went through the door Racia indicated and nearly had his cover blown, as he was overwhelmed. He had to suppress his mana to fool the sensors, and when he reached the other side, he saw that an ID card had been printed for him. Racia took his card and snapped a photo to schedule the investigation of his holy sword. She explained that the investigation was done to register the properties of a person's holy sword. Leonis saw this as a hassle, but decided to improvise and deceive the Inquisitor so no questions would arise about his power. They then got on Razia's bike and drove to the city so she could give him a brief tour of his new home. As they approached the dormitories, a jerk named Musel and his harem approached them, and when he saw the tear in Razia's uniform, he started teasing her about it. Racia tried to ignore him, but the guy was more persistent than a desperate flatterer and stood in her way to stop her from passing. He asked who Leonis was, but Racia told him to mind his own business, making him laugh and say she had been reduced to a little sister since she didn't have a holy sword. Racia defended Leonis, saying he was more of a holy swordsman than Musel could ever dream of becoming, but Musel didn't believe her. He told her it was time to stop playing hard to get and join his platoon, but Racia said she'd rather be eaten by a titan. That irritated Musel, and when he started complaining about her rudeness, Leonis deduced that Musel only wanted Racia in his platoon because he was dying to taste her sweet nectar. When Racia tried to pass by Musel, he grabbed her by the hair to stop her, making Leonis say that real men don't mistreat women. When he turned to look at the Demon Lord, he was confronted with an intense aura that made him kneel before Leonis, who threatened to cut his sausage if he touched Racia again. Terrified, Musel activated his holy sword, which Leonis thought looked like something borrowed from Voldemort. However, before he could use it, Alphine approached and reminded him that it was against the rules to use a holy sword in a personal fight. She also threatened to send footage of the incident to the Administrative Council if he didn't leave. So he left, but not before threatening to make Racia pay for rejecting him. As soon as the uncultured pig and his harem left, Racia thanked Alphine for coming to her rescue. Alphine told her she was just looking out for her and then introduced herself to Leonis as the data analyst of Racia's platoon. Using her holy sword, which also functioned as her analysis device, she took Leonis's measurements and told Racia she would have a uniform ready for him soon. When the girls started talking about the recently completed mission, Racia suddenly felt dizzy, but assured them she was fine, though she had to lean against a tree to balance herself. Eventually, they reached the dormitory, and when they got to Racia's room, she asked Leonis to take a shower before pointing him toward the bathroom. Leonis went to the bathroom, and while washing his hair, Racia came in and started helping him. He was shocked by her boldness, but she said there was nothing wrong with what she was doing, making him wonder how the world's moral values had become so backward. As she began washing him, she said that after the investigation, he could join any platoon of his choice and asked if he would like to join hers. Leonis asked why she was determined to be on the front lines when she didn't have a holy sword. Racia told him it was because she didn't want to be a cliché damsel in distress and wanted to fight to protect the people she cared about. While she was talking, the world started to blur, and before she knew what was happening, she was lying on the floor, unable to move her body. Leonis touched one of her thighs, and the mark that appeared in the ruins showed up again. The next moment, she grew fangs and began drinking his blood. But when she realized what she was doing, she pulled back, confused, and questioned her actions. Then Leonis told her it was the result of him healing her. He explained that he didn't have the power to bring back a life that had been lost and revealed that she was, in fact, dead. The next morning, Racia woke up in her bed, a bit confused about how she got there, as the last thing she remembered was lying on the bathroom floor. Leonis explained that he used magic to take her to bed, so she didn't need to worry about him seeing her private parts. This led her to ask who he was, so he lied, saying he was the reincarnation of an ancient sorcerer, and explained that in his time, magic was a skill people had. He seemed very proud of himself when he revealed that he had used magic to resurrect her as one of his servants, and that now she was the most prestigious type of undead, which he called a vampire queen. Speaking further, he explained that the reason she sought his blood the previous day was because she was weak and her mana had been depleted. Racia couldn't believe she was now a vampire, but Leonis apologized for turning her into one and explained that it was the only way he could think of to bring her back. Surprisingly, she wasn't angry and instead asked if he would like to know more about her. He said yes. She then told him about how she lost her family in a void attack that happened at the 3rd Assault Garden, and about how this academy took her and Regina in afterward. She said that, coming from a long line of holy knights, she believed fighting voids would hasten the awakening of her holy sword, but it hadn't happened, and now that she was dead, she was afraid she would never get a holy sword. Leonis told her he couldn't guarantee she would get a holy sword. However, he could guarantee she would be stronger and faster than before. Now dressed in his new uniform, Leonis accompanied Racia to the cafeteria and tried to pay for the food with one of the gold coins he had saved, only for Racia to tell him his money was worthless, as they only accepted credit as payment, and said the only form of physical money they accepted was alchemically forged silver. Leonis was shocked by this, because he had gone from being the equivalent of Elon Musk to a nobody who couldn't afford YouTube Premium. He was still recovering from the shock of his new status when a girl dressed in traditional clothing entered the cafe with 2 suspicious-looking men. The girl told the men she didn't have money to pay what she owed, but promised to have some by the end of the week. The men told her they would need some kind of collateral, and one of them suggested she give them her clothes. In response, the girl pulled out her wooden sword and brought the 2 idiots to their knees before saying that if they touched her again, they would learn why her mentor was feared. After the men fled like the cowards they were, Racia approached the girl and asked who the men were. The girl, whose name was Sakuya, explained that they were security from the casino she visited the previous night, and said they had come to collect the money she owed the casino. She then turned her attention to Leonis. So Racia introduced them to each other, after which she bought lunch for them. While they ate, Leonis asked Sakuya why her uniform was different from everyone else's, and she said it was because it was the traditional attire of her homeland, Iran. She said she wore it as a tribute to her sister, because her village had been destroyed by voids, and now her life was dedicated to exterminating voids. Later, Racia took Leonis to his appointment, and the woman in charge told him her job was to determine the type of holy sword he possessed. When he showed her his staff, she concluded it was a versatile type, and was in the middle of preparing a void simulation to suit that specification. When Leonis took down the void simulators in front of him, shocked by his powerful skill, she decided to prepare an alternate simulation test, but Musel showed up with his harem of mind-controlled villains and asked to fight Leonis instead. Leonis promptly agreed to face him, as he thought it would be more fun to humiliate the useless piece of trash than to fight some budget Walmart Robocops. When Musel activated his holy sword, his girls did the same, making Racia protest the unfairness of the situation. Musel boasted that the girls were part of his weapon, as his holy sword had an ability called domination that allowed him to control others. Leonis had no problem facing Musel and the girls, but Racia was against it and insisted on helping him. Musel then said that if she and Leonis lost the match, she would join his platoon. And Leonis agreed on the condition that Musel never approach Racia again if he lost. Racia tried to protest the terms of the match, but Leonis assured her that unless pigs started flying, there was no way he would lose to an incompetent imposter like Musel. That seemed to cheer Racia up, so she grabbed one of the training swords and waited for the signal to start the match. The woman in charge informed both parties that the match would end when one side surrendered or was knocked out. When she announced the start of the match, Racia charged at Musel's girls and faced them effortlessly. Musel was surprised by this, but Leonis was impressed to see that, besides her vampire abilities, Racia was a certified swordswoman. When Racia was busy with two of the girls, Musel ordered the other to take down Leonis, but the demon lord blocked her attacks with shadows and then used the same shadows to knock her down. Racia then took down the last girl and went after Musel, but before she could strike him, he used his holy sword to make her freeze in place. He then went after Leonis, hoping to take him down first, but Racia wasn't going to let that happen. She kept saying how she wanted to protect Leonis over and over until a sword manifested in her hands. Everyone was surprised that her holy sword awakened at such a moment, and Racia surprised them even more by breaking free from Musel's control and charging at him. The coward was so stunned that it took him a few moments to realize what was happening until she sliced his holy sword and pointed her sword at him. Having no choice, he accepted his defeat, and Regina ran toward Racia to congratulate her on awakening her holy sword. Later, in the dormitory, Racia asked Leonis if he could help her train to become stronger, and Leonis agreed. After dinner, Leonis went to Alphine's room so she could collect his biological data and upload it to the Academy's network. While there, he asked about her holy sword, and she said it was called Witch's Eye. She said she used it to collect, analyze, and transmit data, as she could no longer use it to attack or fight voids. Leonis asked why that was, and she explained that in her previous platoon, she was the attacker responsible for providing firepower. However, after seeing two of her comrades die, her holy sword lost its attack capabilities. Since then, she hadn't been useful during battles, so when Racia invited her to join her platoon, she happily accepted. When she finished uploading Leonis's data, he noticed she had a map open on her computer, so he asked if he could take a look. She handed him a tablet and explained how it worked. Then, when he returned to Racia's room, he reviewed it, and from what he could see, there were correlations between the places where he fought the heroes in the past and the places where void outbreaks occurred. Hoping to find out more, he summoned Blacks and asked him to report what he had learned during his investigation. Blacks told him that the entire ship was powered by a massive mana crystal that the humans called a power plant. Leonis was intrigued and said that if he could get his hands on the mana crystal, it would be beneficial to his cause. After Blacks left, Sherry appeared with some snacks and tried to get Leonis to try them, but he refused and asked her to brief him on the details of her mission. Sherry reported that no one in the city knew about him or the war that took place 1,000 years ago, which didn't surprise him much. Sherry then expressed her displeasure with Leonis for making Racia his servant, but Leonis told her that Racia would become his greatest triumph one day. When he said he had plans to make her his right-hand woman, Sherry called him a fool and left as soon as Racia entered the room wearing only her towel. Oh my, telling Leonis to go take a shower. Meanwhile, below the ship, a team was investigating some void activity and found a plant-like creature attached to one of the anchor chains. When they tried to approach, they were attacked, and all communication with them was lost. The next day, Leonis woke up and felt a slight pain in his neck, realizing that Racia had fed on his blood while he slept. Immediately, he went to her room and, using the power of the mark on her body, ordered her to wake up. Racia was surprised to be awakened in this way, so he explained that her mark allowed him to compel her to do his will. This made her ask if he could also force her to do one of those intense workouts that cultured people did. Leonis responded by telling her to grab a bucket and a mop and start cleaning her head because it was as dirty as a pigsty. He said she should start behaving like a lady and pointed to the bite marks on his neck. Razia apologized for taking advantage of him while he slept and explained that she was very thirsty, which is why she did it. He accepted her apology but said that the next time she needed blood, she should let him know instead of helping herself to his blood like it was a free buffet. Their conversation was interrupted by the ringing of Racia's phone, and when she answered, Alphine informed her that a strategy meeting had been called. Surprised, Racia asked if she knew the reason, and she said it probably had to do with the research team that went to investigate the void activity in the water the previous night. She said the team still hadn't uploaded their findings to the database, so it was safe to assume something unexpected had happened. After hanging up, Racia told Leonis that since it was their day off, she wanted him to train her, and he agreed. Meanwhile, the strategy meeting was already underway with the ship's acting commander, the military advisor, and the council president all present. They were informed that the research team sent to investigate the void activity above the ship had been wiped off the face of the Earth. At the division commander's request, the scientists displayed the image the team sent before being annihilated. From what they could see, this void resembled plant roots, and this made the woman in charge question whether the void that attacked the team was a void lord or a mutated void. The council president asked her not to jump to conclusions, as women tend to do, and said that the appearance of a void lord could mean that what happened at the third assault garden could happen again. This statement led the acting commander to order a follow-up investigation into the void route, so they made preparations to send a reconnaissance team to the site. Later, while Leonis and Razia were training, he summoned a small portion of his skeletal army and had her fight them. When Razia finished fighting, she was panting as if she had run a marathon. However, she felt accomplished and thanked Leonis for giving her such a challenge. After he called his skeletons back to the shadows, Razia suggested they go eat so she could thank him properly. Elsewhere in the city, Sherry had gotten a job at a restaurant, but nearly gave the boss a heart attack when she cut the bowl along with the potatoes he asked her to peel. Because of this, the man told her to sweep the front of the shop, but as she was about to go out, she spotted Leonis and Racia. Not wanting to be seen by her master, she hid, but she couldn't help feeling irritated that he was having fun with that Elsa knockoff who was planning to do anything but let him go. When they left, she got curious about where they were going and decided it was time to put on her Sherlock hat. Shortly after, Racia stopped in front of the restaurant she mentioned to Leonis. Some children came out of the restaurant to greet them, and Racia explained that the children were orphans who lived there with the owner. Leonis felt an affinity with the children, as he was also an orphan. However, he could sense that the children were in a better situation than he was all those years ago. When they entered, one of the children lifted Racia's skirt, and this made Leonis move to teach the brat a lesson. Before he could, Racia laughed and said it was a silly prank, so he let it go. The restaurant owner soon came down, and after Racia introduced Leonis to her, the children crowded around him like sheep, asking him to show his holy sword. Fortunately, Racia stepped in, saying she had donuts, and that made them forget about him immediately. Meanwhile, the reconnaissance team sent to the void activity site discovered that the root-like void was no longer where the first team had spotted it. This puzzled them, but the sensors definitely picked up some vibrations occurring above the city. Sakuya seemed to sense something was wrong, as she woke up just as Rednold entered and noticed the worried expressions they had. At the same time, in one of the storage rooms beneath the city, some workers found the missing void root, but it had grown and spread. The superiors were soon informed about the missing void root, leaving the acting commander concerned. When the woman in charge told him that Alphine was waiting to brief him on what she had discovered, the man asked to put her on the line. As soon as Alphine's video appeared on the monitor, she told the council that her holy sword had detected micro-vibrations in some areas above the city. She explained that after amplifying the vibrations and removing background noise, she discovered they weren't the same as those from a magical device. She also said there were some disturbances in the magnetic fields, and after detecting similar vibrations in other underground locations, she concluded there was void activity on the ship. The council found it hard to believe what she told them and argued that a void couldn't get past the ship's defenses. The scientist backed up what Alphine said and added that they had obtained the same readings as she did. This led the council to ask how a void had gotten in, and they were told it must have slipped through the anchor chain openings. The council president asked why they couldn't track the void's movements. and Alphine said the creature might be masking its movements to sneak into the city. Of course, he found that absurd, as they had never heard of a case where a void possessed any intelligence. At that moment, another alarm went off, and they received a report that the root-like void was growing in one of the underground storage rooms. Immediately, a team was sent to eliminate it. However, when they arrived, the vines came to life, and chaos ensued. At some point, the live transmission was cut off, and the council tried to contact the commander, but they found that all communications were down. When the transmission came back, the council was informed that the poisonous vine had escaped. The division commander tried to understand how the void was moving and evading them, so they tracked its movements since it entered the ship. Alphine was the first to deduce that the void was heading for the power plant and said that once there, it would trigger a stampede, and what happened at the third assault garden would repeat itself. Immediately, the acting commander ordered soldiers to be sent to the power plant. Unfortunately, when they arrived, the void had already connected to the mana crystals, making it impossible for the soldiers to do anything. With no choice, the acting commander declared that the ship would be put into fortress mode and ordered all civilians to be evacuated to the shelters, while all military personnel prepared for the stampede. Immediately, everyone sprang into action, and as soon as the void took full control of the power plant, the evacuation alarms sounded throughout the city. Racia and Leonis ran out of the restaurant to see what was happening, and Racia nearly fainted from shock upon seeing portals opening and allowing voids to invade the city. She kept watching as the city transformed into a giant weapon and began taking down the voids. At the same time, the members of her platoon gathered in the designated districts to help civilians evacuate to the shelters. Regina asked Alphine if she had contacted Racia, and she said communication was down everywhere. However, she assured her that Racia was fine and would join them soon. The girls soon joined the fight and started taking down voids from all sides. At the restaurant, Leonis watched in awe as the tower fired at the voids, but noticed that Racia was distressed because she couldn't contact her platoon. She then ran back to the restaurant to gather everyone and take them to the shelter. And while she was gone, Sherry suddenly appeared in front of Leonis. He found it a bit strange that she showed up at that moment, but as the situation was critical, he instructed her to find the members of his platoon and help them. After she left, Leonis tried to join Racia and the others but realized that the voids had reached that part of the city. So, before they could leave, he drew Racia's attention to them. Racia then instructed everyone to stay inside while she and Leonis dealt with the voids. Outside, she activated her holy sword, and Leonis summoned his magic staff. Then, when the voids tried to attack, Racia cut off the heads of two, and Leonis burned the rest to ashes. Soon after, more portals opened, and more voids fell into the city. Sakuya and Regina easily took down the Ogre-class and Wyvern-class voids, but things got worse when a Hydra-class void landed in the middle of the city. It even came with some Dragon-class voids as support, and those dragons began destroying the cannons on the tower. Leonis quickly deduced that he would need a high-level spell to kill the dragon, so when a group of Ogre-class voids tried to attack them, he asked Racia to deal with them. When the spell was completed, fireballs began raining down on the voids, but unfortunately, the rain of fire wasn't enough to kill the dragon, and it tried to spit fire at Racia. Fortunately, her reflexes were good, and she moved away before getting burned. At that moment, Blacks emerged from the shadows and bit the dragon, which began trying to shake him off. This allowed Leonis to cast another spell that fortunately defeated the dragon once and for all. Racia was surprised that he had defeated the dragon alone, but before she could get up, the ground opened, and the vines of the Void Lord captured her. After they dragged her away, Leonis tried to go after her, but more vines appeared and took the shape of a face. This face was familiar to Leonis, as it was none other than Erelkel, the Great Sage. Leonis tried to attack Erelkel with a fire spell, but the overgrown brute dodged and crawled back into the ground from where it came. Leonis used the seal on his hand to confirm that Racia was still alive, and deduced that Erelkel had taken her to lure him below. As he was about to jump after them, Blacks emerged from the shadows and drew his attention to the children and the restaurant owner who were watching him. Leonis approached them and asked them to go back inside, as it wasn't safe to stay outside. They ignored what he said, but the older girl told him they had come out to thank him for protecting them, and begged him to rescue Rosalia before it was too late. He assured the girl he would bring Rosalia back, but before joining Blacks, he raised a magical barrier around the restaurant and summoned 2 skeletons to protect the place. After he returned to Blacks, Leonis heard Alphine's voice coming from Rosalia's earrings that had fallen when that shapeless swamp monster captured her. He picked them up and informed Alphine of the situation, after which he begged her to use her holy sword to track Rosalia's location. Alphine refused, saying the mission was too dangerous for an underdeveloped kid like him. She instructed him to go to where she and the others were fighting Godzilla's younger brother, and assured him that the platoon in that district would rescue her. Leonise argued that it would be too late and begged her to track Rosalia's biological signature, so she agreed. A few seconds later, she told Leonis that Rosalia was at the power plant, so he thanked her and cut off the communication. At that moment, Regina shouted for Alphine to get out of the way, but her reaction was too slow, and when she was about to become Kaiju's breakfast, Sherry, protected her by using her whip to decapitate the void before it could reach her. Meanwhile, Leonis and Blax arrived at the power plant and found Arelkel's roots wrapped around the mana crystal, from which he was actively draining energy. Leonis tried to dislodge him from the crystal by setting him on fire, but the old man regenerated in a matter of seconds. He then demanded to know how Leonis was still alive, and Leonis said it was because he had sealed his soul. He called him a fool and said his resurrection would end in vain because the world was about to be rebuilt, along with the empty star. The next moment, miniature heads sprouted around his vines, and when they began harmonizing in unison, Leonis asked if he had somehow ended up on the set of a Disney movie. However, he soon realized that those harmonizing heads were the priests of the holy order that Arelchel had assimilated. It didn't take long after this realization for Arelchel to start attacking Leonis and Blax. They dodged his roots and counterattacked, but they soon realized they were at a disadvantage because they were in Arelchel's expanded domain. Worst of all, he could cast multiple spells because of the extra heads he had. At the same time, Rosalia tried to escape the roots that bound her, but the more she struggled against them, the more she bled. Still, she didn't let herself be defeated, as all she wanted was to break free and go help Leonis. So she activated her holy sword. Fortunately, her vampire powers kicked in, and using her blood, she created mini blades that she used to cut her bindings. This allowed Leonis to locate her position, and the next moment, he threw the earring he had infused with his blood into her chest. Immediately, Rosalia's power levels increased, and she broke free from her bindings, while sprouting a pair of blood wings. When Rosalia saw Leonis, she ran to him, which infuriated Arelkel, so he swore he would make Leonis pay. He then began chanting a spell that Blax recognized, and deduced that when he finished, the losses would be colossal, as the entire ship would resemble the port city of Liberiu. Leonis came to the same conclusion, so he asked Rosalia to buy time while he prepared to take down Arelchel. Without hesitation, Rosalia spilled some of her blood and used it to form more blood blades that she began using to fight Arelchel's roots. Blax asked Leonis what his plan was, and the demon lord said it was time to bring out the big guns, or in his case, his demonic sword. Blax reminded him of what Rosalia had said about the sword, and Leonis told him he knew what he was doing. Upon drawing the sword, he declared that the 7th Assault Garden now belonged to him, as the condition to wield the sword was that he be willing to protect what was his. After the sword acknowledged Leonis's decision, he used it to deliver a powerful blow that he called Ragnar Lost. With that, Arelkel was defeated, and the stampede began to subside. Then, Rosalia and Leonis returned to the surface and reunited with their friends. Days later, while reconstruction was underway, Leonis visited the library to do some research on the city he had claimed as his own. However, when he tried to access the vault, he was denied entry, and the artificial spirit in charge informed him that he needed authorization from the administrative office to access the vault. Leonis tried to convince the spirit to let him in, but the spirit insisted he make a formal request. At that moment, Regina sneaked up and covered his eyes, but he easily guessed who it was. Regina then teased him, saying he should have pretended and enjoyed the feeling of her breasts against his back for longer. Leonis scolded her for making such a suggestion and asked if she had followed him to the library, as he hadn't told anyone where he was going. She told him it was pure coincidence that they ran into each other and explained that she had come to return a video software she had borrowed when she saw him standing there. She asked what he had come to do there, and he said he came to research the ancient language written all over the ruins that found him. Regina believed his lie and offered to help him before sidestepping him and approaching the spirit. She asked to let Leonis into the vault, and when it tried to say she didn't have authorization, she somehow convinced it to obey. Leonis asked how she managed that, and she said a true magician never reveals their secrets. After entering the vault, both received messages inviting them to the award ceremony on the princess's ship for the role they played during the stampede. At that moment, Racia called Leonis to ask where he was, and he said he had gone out to eat but promised to meet her and the others at the port later. After hanging up the phone, he asked Regina to leave without him, but she said she wasn't going to the ceremony and then left. Meanwhile, in the demi-human conservation area, some demi-humans were planning to kidnap the princess and force the Empire to release their imprisoned relatives. A goblin named Elsa asked their leader, Bezeta, if it was wise to carry out such a dangerous mission when they knew the humans possessed holy swords. Before he could respond, a dark elf who introduced herself as Sharnak, the evil witch of the Evadark forest, approached them. She told them she could help them and proposed that they hijack the princess's ship along with her and force her to take them to the capital. The group seemed to accept the idea and asked how they would accomplish such a feat, and she said she would grant them powers far superior to any holy sword. She then raised her demonic sword in front of Bezeta and granted him another demonic sword, which she claimed was a gift from the goddess. Bezeta tested his new blade, and the group was amazed at how easily it cut a tree in half. Sharnak promised to grant similar weapons to all of them, but asked that in return they deliver all the holy swordsmen to her to sacrifice to the goddess, and they agreed. Later, Leonis arrived at the port, but before going to the ship, he visited some stalls and bought a gift for Racia, because he felt she had been a loyal servant and deserved it. He arrived at the ship as the princess stepped out onto the deck to wave to her subjects, and he told himself it was a good tactic to keep the people loyal. Racia and the others soon arrived, and after Leonis approached them, he gave Racia the gift he bought for her. Racia thanked him, and after putting the gift away, she said it was time to board the ship. But before they could do so, a busybody named Fenris approached them. She boasted about representing the student council president at the ceremony and asked Racia if she and her group of misfits were there for sightseeing. Racia said they had also been invited to the ceremony, and when it seemed they were about to start exchanging words, Alphine intervened. Fenris listened to Alphine, but, before walking away, condescendingly congratulated Racia for awakening her holy sword. Leonis asked who the annoying blonde was, and Racia told him she was the Draco Malfoy to his Harry Potter. Meanwhile, the demi-humans invaded the ship and stole the faces of the guards they murdered to blend in. Sometime later, after everyone had boarded the ship, the princess and her guards were ambushed on their way to the banquet hall. The demi-humans murdered her guards and told her that if she did what they asked, they would let her keep living. The princess quickly released her spirit animal and encouraged it to escape before Sharnak revealed herself. At the same time, the remaining demi-humans took control of the room where the guests were. Fenris tried to play the hero, but Elsa shot at the guests and threatened that the next shot would send someone to the afterlife if she didn't put away her holy sword. With no choice, she obeyed Elsa. But to ensure no one else did the same, the elder elf threw an apple bomb. He warned that if they did anything, he would detonate the bomb. So, everyone obeyed and handed over their phones and communication devices. The civilians were then kept separate from Rosalia and the others. And when the demi-humans were asked what they wanted, Gerdo revealed they wanted the Empire to release their king. Fenris told him the crown didn't negotiate with terrorists, which irritated him, but Elsa reminded him they shouldn't harm them. He backed off and started complaining about how he didn't understand why a goddess needed so many sacrifices. Upon hearing the word goddess, Leonis grew curious and decided to investigate. However, he told Rosalia he was going to check on the princess. After he slipped away using his shadows, the girls huddled together so the demi-humans wouldn't notice he was gone. Meanwhile, Sharnak used artificial spirits to force the princess to activate the ship's engine and set a course for an empty reef. Bezeta was surprised by this and insisted the princess change the course, but Sharnak said she didn't care about their plans to free the king. She then revealed she had used them for her own plans, and when Bezeta tried to attack her, she manipulated his demonic sword and burned him alive. Frightened for his life, Giraffe stayed quiet and agreed to do whatever Sharnak wanted. Outside, a guard noticed the ship was moving, and while trying to figure out why, the princess's spirit found its way to Regina. When Regina touched the spirit, she heard the princess's voice asking for help. Realizing something was wrong, she grabbed the spirit and jumped onto the ship before it left the port. As fate would have it, she found Leonis in the hallway, and when he asked what she was doing there, she revealed that her little sister was in danger. She then revealed she was the fourth princess of the Empire, but her birth had been seen as a bad omen. This was because she was born on the night when a red star, which the people nicknamed the Scarlet Calamity, shone in the sky. She said the king had ordered her death, but Rosalia's grandfather convinced the king to let her live. He then handed her over to Rosalia's father, who took her to his home and raised her alongside Rosalia as her maid to keep her identity a secret. She said only the members of her platoon knew her secret, and the only reason she had gone to the port was to catch a glimpse of her sister. However, she found her spirit, and as all royal family members possess the ability to connect with spirits like all avatars, it warned her that her sister was in trouble. So, she boarded the ship. Leonis told her the princess had been captured by some demi-humans and added that the banquet hall was also under their control. He said he had slipped away to look for the princess and asked her to join him. Regina quickly accepted the offer and placed the spirit on the ground so it could guide them to the princess. In the banquet hall, Alphine told Racia she had analyzed the bomb's characteristics using one of her drones hidden behind the chandelier. She said the elf's wand was the bomb's trigger and asked Racia to delay its activation. Racia found a fruit fork on the floor behind her and used it to pierce one of her fingers so she could use her powers. At the same time, Leonis and Regina reached the bridge, but found that Sharnak and the princess had disappeared. Regina saw that they had disabled the control panel, so she couldn't divert the ship from the course it had been set on. Leonis suggested she contact the princess using the spirit, but Regina refused, saying that if she did, her identity would be revealed. The demon lord reminded her that the reason she boarded the ship was to save her sister, so it didn't matter what she had to do to achieve that. Regina took his words to heart and decided to contact the princess. And after a few seconds, she did. The princess asked who she was, and she said she was a passing spirit medium who happened to find the spirit. She then asked where the princess was, and the princess said they were heading to the command cabin. Regina said she would come to her, but the princess asked her not to and begged her to prioritize changing the ship's course. She said the ship was heading toward an empty reef, and that the only way to change the course was to connect to the spirit monitoring system in the heart of the lower deck and enter the access code. She gave Regina the access code and begged her to hurry before it was too late. When the connection was cut off, Regina told Leonis where to find the princess, so he promised to bring her back in one piece and jumped through the window to the lower deck. In the banquet hall, Racia used her blood as a rope and connected it to the elf's wand without anyone noticing. Before she could give Alphine the signal to block the bomb's signal, Fenris started taunting the demi-humans. Gerdo tried to get her to stop blabbering, but while he was in the middle of threatening her, they heard a plate break. The culprit was Sakuya, who had untied herself because she was hungry and needed her hands to eat. Gerdo approached her angrily, but Elsa warned him to be careful, as she could tell from Sakuya's clothes that she was one of those adrenaline junkies from Uran. Fenris stood up at that moment, and as she liked to make everything revolve around her, claimed the right to fight Gerdo. The stupid wolf fell for her taunts and charged, but she easily knocked him to the ground, proving she had earned her black belt fairly. Racia and Alphine used this confusion to execute their plan and disarm the elder elf before he could activate the bomb. Elsa tried to keep everyone down, threatening them with her gun, but Sakuya knocked her out with the hilt of her sword. Fenris then activated her holy sword, which took the form of ice wolves, and ordered them to attack Gerdo. The elf was the only one left, and Racia easily knocked him out before scolding Fenris for nearly ruining the plan with her big mouth. After freeing all the hostages, Racia tried to call Leonis but couldn't reach him. That's when the children drew attention to the windows, and it was then they realized the ship had sailed into an empty reef. The Voids wasted no time invading the ship, so Fenris and Sakuya started fighting them while Alphine and Racia guided the people out of the room. Leonis contacted Racia through the keychain he had given her and told her to go help Regina. She left immediately, and when she found her, the two took down a Void before running to the lower deck. In the banquet hall, the girls did their best to keep the Voids at bay, but the situation worsened when Big X's distant cousin, whom they nicknamed Brain Eater, appeared. Sakuya asked the others to go to the other room and protect the people while she stayed to fight the Brain Eater. As soon as Fenris locked the door behind them, Sakuya unlocked a secret technique that transformed her sword into a demonic sword. Meanwhile, Regina and Racia reached the lower deck, and after a brief fight with the Voids, Regina went ahead and connected to the monitoring system, while Racia stood guard outside. Giraffe was devoured by the Voids, and just as the princess began to lose hope, she noticed the ship was changing course. Sharnak tried to fly off the ship, but Leonis held the aircraft in place using his shadows. Back in the banquet hall, the girls were cornered, but Sherry appeared and defeated the remaining Voids while Sakuya took down the Brain Eater. Outside, Sharnak demanded to know who Leonis was, and he said he was a demon lord. She called him a stupid child and said playing pretend didn't qualify him as a demon lord. But Leonis proved he was the real deal by countering the spell she tried to use on him. The witch was surprised, but he didn't give her time to process that information before binding her with his shadows and demanding she reveal the name of the goddess she was working for. Sharnak tried to speak, but before she could utter the words, she started glitching like an old Pac-Man game, and suddenly a sword was protruding from her. Leonis recognized the sword as the Demon Lord's Slayer, the evil-destroying blade, Zogstar Miko, and wondered how it had ended up there. Before his very eyes, the sword transformed into a Decepticon knockoff and opened portals to bring voids to the deck. He tried to destroy the sword, but it still possessed the powers it had when it was a holy sword, so it countered Leonis's spell. Before he could think of another way to destroy it, it teleported and reappeared behind Leonis, just as the Demon Lord realized the princess was in danger. Leonis took out the voids, but the sword thought it would be fun to play hide-and-seek with him. Regina saw what was happening through the camera on the deck, so she controlled the weapons to open fire on the voids and the sword. When she realized the weapons were ineffective against the sword, she launched missiles at it. Racia rode the second missile Regina launched, and after Leonis caught her, he asked her to keep the voids at bay while he dealt with the sword. While she did that, he drew his demonic sword and used Ragnar Lost to take down the corrupted holy sword. Later, the princess thanked the girls for saving her and the hostages from the demi-humans and the voids. Leonis and Regina were not present. So, when the princess asked about them, Racia said Leonis was feeling a bit sick, so he was sent home, and said Regina had already left. However, she delivered the message Regina asked her to give the princess, which was that she wished her a bright and joyful future. A few days later, the guards located the remaining members of the demi-human group that tried to kidnap the princess. Before they could capture them, Leonis appeared and turned the guards to stone. He then revealed himself to the demi-humans, but didn't let them see his face because he wore a mask. He forced the demi-humans to kneel when they tried to rebel against him, and said the only reason they were still breathing was because he was feeling generous. He then told them his name was Zoval and claimed to be a demon lord, as well as the rightful ruler of the world. He asked them to dedicate the rest of their NPC lives to serving him, if they wanted to avoid being captured by the humans. With no choice, they swore loyalty to him, and he created an underground labyrinth for them to stay in until he needed them. Unfortunately, before he could make a dramatic exit, Racia called his phone, and when he answered, she demanded to know where he was. He quickly hung up on her and went back to acting like a low-budget evil overlord before disappearing into the shadows, leaving his new minions stunned. When he returned to the dormitory, he got rid of his mask and cape before leaving the room to find Racia. It didn't take long to find her, as she had forgotten to lock the door while getting dressed. So, being a gentleman, Leonis turned around. Regina entered at that moment, and when she saw the two, she asked if she was interrupting something. Both swore she was misunderstanding the situation, and after Racia got dressed, they sat down to eat the sandwiches Regina brought. Racia asked Leonis where he had gone that morning, and he lied, saying he had gone to train in preparation for the training match they would have later that day. The girls told him it was a wise decision and said they had to give their all if they wanted to beat Fenris's platoon and move up in rank. A few hours later, the training match began, and Racia and Leonis worked together to capture one of Fenris's platoon's flags. Alfine was tasked with protecting their platoon's main flag and also keeping an eye on the rest of their team. She and Regina worked well together, but Sakuya got carried away and started chasing Fenris's ice wolves. From the stands, the woman in charge figured out the 18th platoon's strategy and told the council members it was a good strategy, but if they didn't implement it correctly, they could lose the match. At that moment, an ice wolf charged at Racia, and while she tried to take it down, another sneaked up behind her and bit her leg. Leonis destroyed the wolf, but the frostbite on Racia's leg remained and hurt. Fenris revealed herself after that and laughed at Racia for falling into her trap, but Racia told her to stop acting so arrogant. She asked why she was guarding a subflag when she was the captain, and Fenris said it was because she wanted the chance to fight her. Feeling confident, she revealed her platoon's strategy, and that's when Racia realized they had been playing Fenris's game the whole time. Leonis admired Fenris's intelligence, but told himself it didn't make up for the fact that she was competing for the title of Most Annoying Character of the Year. Fenris told Racia that defeating her would mean a perfect victory for her and then transformed her wolves into boxing gloves. Her subordinate went after Leonis, but he knocked her out in less than a minute before turning his attention to Ricea and Fenris. Fenris threw Ricea against a tree and pinned her there with ice, but Ricea said she wouldn't let her defeat her. She also said some other things that sounded like something a motivational speaker would say. And when she finished, she broke her ice shackles. Fenris fainted from shock after Ricea knocked her down and left her sword a few centimeters from her face. A few minutes later, the 11th platoon's main flag was captured, and the 18th platoon was declared the winner of the match. That night, a mysterious man named Nephaquis, who turned out to be Sharnak's partner in crime, fed holy swords to a mana crystal. He wondered aloud how she had died, but said she did a great job securing the holy swords for him. The swords were an offering to the goddess they were trying to resurrect, and he said it was almost time for her to awaken. Outside, a portal opened and the third assault garden he was using as a base floated out to the open ocean. A few hours later, the woman in charge summoned the 18th platoon and informed them that her unmanned drones had sent footage of the third assault garden that appeared out of nowhere. She said the ship was sailing toward them and added that they had received 2 distress signals from the ship. She said those distress signals could mean there were survivors on the ship, but they couldn't be sure until they checked. So she assigned them a mission. The mission was simple: search for survivors and shut down the ship's engines. They had to complete the mission within 72 hours, because if that time was exceeded, it would be too late for the 7th assault garden to retreat, and the 3rd assault garden would collide with it. The platoon accepted the mission, but Ricea asked why she had assigned the mission to them. The woman admitted it was because Ricea and Regina came from there, but she also said she believed in their capabilities as a team. Ricea thanked her for her honesty and tried to suggest they leave Leonis out of the mission, but he protested and insisted they take him along. The next day, the girls gathered on the flight deck to make the short trip to the 3rd assault garden. Before joining them, Leonis asked Blacks to keep an eye on the city in his absence, and instructed Sherry to go with him. Soon, they were in the air, and a few hours later, Alfine landed the aircraft on the 3rd assault garden. As soon as everyone disembarked from the aircraft, Ricea instructed Regina, Sakuya, and Alfine to see if they could locate where the distress signal came from. She said she and Leonis would go to the power plant to shut it down, but Alfine insisted she allow her to send one of her drones with them. As they split into groups, Leonis instructed Sherry to follow the girls and take care of them in case of an emergency, a task the demon maid was dissatisfied with but had no choice but to obey her master's order. Shortly after, Leonis and Ricea were attacked by a void, and Ricea got trapped under a lamppost. A few minutes before their aircraft landed on the ship, an elf named Arlie appeared in another part of the destroyed city. It seemed she had been sent from the past to carry out a mission, so she found some clothes and went to inspect the area. It was while she was doing this that the 108th platoon arrived, and she was confused about what they had flown in on. Nephax appeared suddenly behind her and said that what she had seen was a transport device, not a dragon. Arlie turned to face him, surprised, and Nephax said it was an honor to be in the presence of the great elf heroine. That statement made Arlie adopt a defensive stance, and she asked if he was also from the past. Nephax introduced himself as Nephax, the Void Lord, and said he knew she was there to destroy the goddess's vessel. This made her even more suspicious of him, but when she moved to attack him, he disappeared like his hairline. Before she could figure out where he had gone, a void appeared behind her. At the same time, Leonis used his shadows to teleport Ricea to an underground tunnel to keep her from getting hurt. The void attacked with a spell and destroyed Alfine's drone in the process. But thanks to his barrier, Leonis wasn't harmed. He retaliated with another spell, but the void blocked the attack with a barrier. Realizing the void was mimicking an angel and using its powers to counter his low-level spells, Leonis decided to get serious. The void kept attacking Leonis and countering all his spells, but he managed to defeat it using a fireball spell and a lightning spell. He then ran to the tunnel to check on Ricea, who discovered when she tried to stand that her legs were injured. Leonis assured her that her vampire abilities would heal her, but said it would take a while. He suggested they find a place to hide until she was fully healed, but while he was talking, he noticed some figures approaching them. Immediately, he tried to attack them, but Ricea told him not to, because her mana counter wasn't picking up any signals. When the figures got closer, Ricea realized they were ghosts, and recognized the crest on their clothes as her family's. Their leader, Woodian, explained that they came because they knew she was injured and wanted to help her. Woodian also said that if she was on the ship, It meant their distress signal had reached them, so she asked why ghosts needed to send a distress signal. Woodian explained that they sent it as a warning because the 7th Assault Garden was at risk of being overtaken by a stampede. According to him, the new Void Lord had set up in the ruins and was interfering with the mana crystal. Once it had absorbed all the energy, it would awaken, and chaos would reign. Rasia said that if that was the case, they needed to find proof of the Void Lord's presence and send it to the 7th Assault Garden so they could evacuate. Woodian promised they would help her do that, but suggested she go with them to her family's estate and stay there until she fully recovered. Leonise helped her up from the surface, and Rasia was surprised to see that the ghosts had driven a limousine to come pick her up. Leonise found it impressive but summoned his skeletal horses to pull the limousine to their destination because he wanted them to go faster than they could walk. Meanwhile, the others found Arlie, who mistook them for Nefax's accomplices, and challenged them to a fight. Since Sakuya was the only one skilled with a sword, she accepted the challenge and fought Arlie. However, a few minutes into the fight, she overpowered Arlie with her weapon and acknowledged that the only reason she won was because Arlie was injured. Inside the limousine, Rasia asked Leonis for a blood refill, and he offered his neck. But after a few seconds, he realized that if he didn't stop her, she would drain him. Fortunately, Alphine contacted them at that moment, so Rasia pulled away to talk to her and said they were heading to her family's estate. She said she and Leonis would wait there until Alphine and the others joined them so they could go to the power plant together. Alphine told her they would leave as soon as they finished treating Arlie, who they believed was a survivor. After they cut the communication line, Leonis presented Rasia with a dress that he said would enhance her powers whenever she wore it. Rasia thanked him for the gift, and he used magic to compress it onto her body, saying all she had to do was imagine herself wearing it if she wanted to use it. Next, he gave her 3 skeleton keychains and said they were good luck charms. In the destroyed mall, Regina finished treating Arlie, and Sakuya asked her name after leaving a new shirt for her. Arlie told them her name and apologized for attacking them earlier, but they told her not to worry about it. At that moment, Alphine mentioned that Arlie's name wasn't listed in the 3rd Assault Garden's database and asked how she had ended up there. Arlie ignored her question and asked what they were doing on the ship, so she explained they were on a mission to investigate the ruins. Arlie found everything she said a bit strange, but considering they were in the future, she didn't try to make sense of it. She revealed she was on a mission to kill a goddess, but refused to say who assigned her the mission or where she came from. When she tried to leave, her stomach growled. So, Sakuya offered her some snacks and suggested she rest a bit. Meanwhile, Rasia and Leonis arrived at her family's estate, and while Rasia walked through the ruined mansion reminiscing, Leonis sat downstairs polishing a bone. When Rasia entered what was left of her father's office, she became sad and started crying. To make her feel better, the ghosts created an illusion of the past, where her father had sat with her in the office and read her the story of the Demon Lord. According to the story, the Demon Lord was cruel and lived in a castle made of bones. His cruelty angered God, so God granted power to a hero and sent him to defeat the Demon Lord. After the Demon Lord's defeat, everyone praised the hero, and they lived happily ever after. When her father finished the story, he told her there was more to it than the book said, and Rasia begged him to tell her more. The illusion soon faded, and Rasia was back in the destroyed room. But this time, Nefaquis was in the room with her. When Rasia asked if he was a savior, he got annoyed and attacked her with a high-level spell. Rasia fell and hit her head, and while she was unconscious on the floor, she dreamed of her last conversation with her father, which happened on the night of the stampede. She begged him to take her with him, but he refused and told her to go to the shelter with Regina and the others. However, before leaving, he said that in the story, the Demon Lord would appear when the world needed him most and defeat the voids. The next moment, she opened her eyes and was surprised to see 3 skeletons in front of her. Nefaquis was also surprised to see the skeletons and wondered if he had been wrong to assume Rasia was a normal human. He tried to attack her again, but Leonis arrived at that moment and countered the spell. Nefaquis was hit by Leonis's spell and fell in a ball of fire while Leonis checked on Rasia. She assured him she was fine and asked who the skeletons were, because she realized they were the ones who protected her from Nefaquis's attack earlier. Leonis told her they were the keychains he had given her in the limousine, and the skeletons introduced themselves as the 3 warriors of Hognos. When they started arguing about who defended Rasia first, Nefaquis got up from his position on the floor, and that's when Leonis got a good look at him. The demon lord was shocked to see him there, as he believed Nefakwiz had perished with his master 1,000 years ago. Nefakwiz tried to attack Racia again, but Leonis caught him off guard by using an ice spell to counter his fire spell. He then asked Nefakwiz what he was doing there. But before he could answer, the entire place started shaking. Nefakwiz laughed and said it seemed Saint Tiras had fulfilled her role as a vessel for the goddess. Leonis asked which goddess he was referring to, but Nefakwiz refused to say and opened a portal to leave. The last thing he said before the portal closed was that the world was destined to crumble at the hands of the goddess. After the portal closed, the tremors started again, and Leonis saw the symbol of the Holy Order shining in the sky. Before he could make sense of it, the skeleton suggested they leave the building. When they got outside, they saw the giant remains of Tiras emerging from the power plant. Woodian explained that she was the Void Lord they had been warned about. And as they watched, the Void Angels surrounding her sang the hymn of the Holy Order. When Tiras began to move, the Voids descended and attacked Leonis and the others, but they repelled them. Unfortunately, every void they destroyed regenerated because of Tiras's regeneration ability, making things harder for them until Leonis instructed them to crush the heads. At the same time, the voids attacked the girls, and the same thing happened until Alphine analyzed the void and discovered the heads were their weaknesses. She then sent her drones to locate a vehicle they could use to reach Racia and Leonis, and when she found one, the four ran to it. On the other side, Racia and the skeletons kept crushing void heads, but Leonis decided to take Tiras down for good. He hit her with a high-level fire spell that was as hot as the sun, but due to her regenerative ability, she wasn't harmed. In retaliation, she activated a level 11 spell that burned everything it touched, including her voids. But Leonis protected his group with an equally high-level barrier. When her reign of destruction stopped, Leonis removed the barrier and asked Racia and the skeletons to protect his back while he finished things. He drew his demonic sword and floated into the air to have a better chance of hitting Tiras with Ragnar Lost. However, as he prepared to do so, the sword began to resonate, and the next time, he heard Roselia's voice coming from inside Tiras's body. She asked if he was really going to kill her with the sword she gave him, and all Leonis could do was try to understand why she would be inside a Void Lord. Eventually, he grew tired and unleashed the power of his sword, but Tiras absorbed the attack and retaliated with magic arrows. The arrows hit everything in sight, including Leonis, so he fell to the ground. Racia tried to go to him but stopped when she noticed Tiras preparing another level 11 spell. Torn between running to Leonis's side and stopping Tiras, Racia activated the dress Leonis had given her. Using her blood as a power source, she sent a strike toward Tiras, and when it hit her, she collapsed to the ground. Racia then ran to Leonis's side while the skeletons protected them and discovered he was dying. Leonis weakly asked Racia to drink his blood and then leave, but she refused and hugged him tightly. She then pressed her bloodied hand to his wound and began transferring blood to him. While she did this, Leonis saw the past where Roselia told him that if he found her in the future and she was something else, she wanted him to kill her with his demonic sword. The old Leonis said he couldn't keep such a promise, so she told him he should make sure to find the real her. The next moment, Leonis opened his eyes, and after sitting up, he told himself the false goddess would die by his sword. He thanked Racia for saving his life and asked her for a piece of her dress. Racia cut off a piece and gave it to him, so he used it to repair his damaged shirt, as he was a classic man who hated messy clothes. When Tiras began to rise, he told Racia he would defeat her once and for all. The only problem was that he had used most of his mana during the first attack and would need time to gather more. Woodian and the other ghosts approached him and asked to convert their souls into an energy source. They told him that if their souls weren't enough, he could use the souls of all those who died on the day of the stampede and were still trapped there. This made Leonis realize that Tiras's resurrection ability was what allowed the ghosts to have astral forms. Woodian begged him to grant them this final wish, and Leonis said he would. But as he began gathering the other souls, he told Woodian he had a job for him and his friends. He summoned some skeletons and fused their souls with them so they could stand by Racia's side and fight for the first and last time. He then asked Racia to lead them in battle and keep the voids at bay until he finished gathering all the souls to defeat Tiras. On the other side of the city, Alphine got the motorcycles running, and Arlie asked to let her go with them, saying she had a duty to fulfill. The girls were against it, as she was injured, but Sakuya convinced them to let her go with them. As they drove toward Tiras, Alphine took control of Regina's motorcycle with one of her drones so Regina could attack the voids trying to strike them, Arlie and Sakuya also fought the voids while the motorcycles headed toward the power plant. On Leonis's side, Risaya and the skeletons fought the voids, but Tiras tried to intervene with her level 11 spell. Quickly, Risaya grabbed Leonis and flew upward to keep him from getting hurt, and he said he needed a few more minutes. The girls soon reached a point in the road that was destroyed, but since Alphine had watched all the Fast and Furious movies, she kept driving and jumped over the gap. After they reached the other side, a void tried to attack them, but Sherry emerged from the shadows and took care of it. Leonis soon finished gathering the souls and began absorbing their energy into his sword so he could finish the job. Tiras noticed this and tried to stop him by throwing a building at him, but Risaya cut it in half before it got close. When the sword was ready, Tiras raised a high-level protective barrier around her body. Leonis worried that this would interfere with his plans. However, he couldn't stop and prepared to hit her with Ragnar Lost. At the same time, the girls approached Tiras from behind, and Arlie infused her holy sword with her mana. Regina and Sakuya also prepared their holy swords, and when they were close enough, they unleashed the power of their weapons on Tiras. The combined power of Regina and Sakuya weakened the barrier, allowing Arlie's strike to hit Tiras's side and force her to drop the barrier completely. While Tiras clutched her side in pain, Leonis wondered who had hit her. But when Tiras turned, and he started hearing Roselia's voice again, he unleashed Ragnar Lost on her. While Tiras burned, Arlie fainted, and Risaya heard her father's voice saying the Demon Lord would return and rid the world of the voids. When Tiras disappeared completely, the ship stopped moving, and all the voids vanished. Woodian and the other ghosts said goodbye to Risaya, and she asked them to say hi to her family in the afterlife for her. Soon after they left, Risaya heard Regina calling for her and ran toward where the voice was coming from. When the two hugged, Leonis stored the skeletons in his shadow and went to join them. Alphine and Sakuya, carrying an unconscious Arlie, also joined them, and when Leonis saw the elf hero, he was shocked. However, he controlled his expressions and stayed quiet while the girls waved to the aircraft that came to pick them up. On the way home, Leonis wondered what Arlie was doing in that era, but his thoughts were interrupted by Risaya, who asked why he had a frown on his face. He told her there was no problem and then asked what book she was reading. She said it was a fairy tale book she had found in her father's office about a demon lord and the hero who defeated him. When she shared some details of the book, Leonis argued they were wrong. So, she asked how he knew that. He said it was a hunch, but in his mind, he was intrigued to learn more about the story, as it was the only thing that referred to his past. Risaya then said he reminded her of the demon lord from the story, which shocked him. Later, while Risaya was taking a shower, Leonis told Blax what happened at the third assault garden. Like Leonis, Blax was surprised that Nefakwi was there, and even more surprised to learn he was behind Tiras's resurrection as the vessel of the false Roselia. Leonis said he was sure Nefakwi would show up again, and when he did, he would twist his arm until he sang like a bird. Sherry then warned Leonis to be careful, as Arlie was around, and he ordered her to follow Arlie until she found out why the elf was in that era. Their conversation was interrupted by Risaya's arrival, who asked Leonis if she could have his blood. Since Blax and Sherry disappeared when she entered, he said yes, and she helped herself. A few hours later, Arlie woke up in the infirmary, and upon realizing where she was, she concluded her mission wasn't over. She retrieved her sword from the storage room and then made a hole in the wall to escape. This set off the alarms, and when Leonis heard them, he looked out the window and told himself his kingdom was always bustling.